This is TWiT.
All right, so while this is happening, I'll just point out that the Financial Times reported this week that Microsoft has agreed to stop bundling Microsoft Teams with its Office suite to avoid an EU antitrust investigation, which
what does that
is
even
interesting.
mean?
I know that's the thing. Like I literally, so I wrote a follow up to this article where I kind of what does that mean? I literally, that's the in the notes it's, does Microsoft have an antitrust problem, right? So it's like what does this mean?
Yeah.
Right. So I looked up a few things. First of all, some of the language here I think is a little incorrect. I think what they're really talking about here are Microsoft 365 subscriptions, where you download the Office suite from Microsoft, right? Because you're a paying subscriber and you get the classic desktop apps. And I actually do have a commercial account, and I have a personal account, obviously. I typically just use the personal account. I don't have any great reason for that. I think it's just because most PCs come with Office, so I sign in. And what that means to me is I have to go download the Teams client manually. That's my experience. Yeah. So anyway, so I looked into this, and what I found, I actually asked Mary Jo about this. I was a little confused. In March 2019, so not like a month ago and not a year ago, but 4 years ago, if you download the Office Desktop suite from your workplace's Microsoft 365 account, it actually does install Teams, right? And it adds Teams to existing setups that had done this previously before they were requiring this. I'm assuming a lot of that's running out. I mean, it's probably all new stuff. So the reason Microsoft has this potential or actually not EU, is it EU? Yeah, no, it is EU. I thought it was UK, but EU issue is that Slack, back when it was a standalone company, filed an antitrust complaint against Microsoft with the EU in July 2020. So over a year after this policy.
And a year before they got acquired.
Yep, by Salesforce. Yeah.
Right.
And man, the original complaint is fascinating. I remember reading this at the time and thinking, this is really inflammatory. It's very interesting. So this is some of the language they use. Microsoft has illegally tied its Teams product into its market dominant Office productivity suite, force installing it for millions, blocking its removal, and hiding the true cost to enterprise customers. So I thought let's break that down. Okay. First of all, market dominant Office productivity suite is a slightly outdated term. I don't know that a lot of people are buying Office on a Best Buy shelf, installing it with a disk, and that's how they acquire things. Like to me, when I hear that, you're describing some kind of an old way of doing things. They are force installing it. So in the same way that they're force installing OneNote, when you install Office, if you acquire it through a Microsoft 365 commercial subscription. So yes, okay. Blocking its removal, though, that was an interesting one. So I brought that up at the beginning of the show. I looked into this, and as it turns out, if you install Teams this way, and you then go and uninstall Teams, it will come back. And that's because, and this is the tip, you have to also uninstall something called the Teams machine-wide installer. And yes, that's the name of it. If you don't do that, that's the thing that keeps reinstalling Teams. So you have to uninstall two things, whatever. But
right.
And then what was the third bit? Hiding the true cost to enterprise customers. Hiding the true cost. That's fascinating. Because that suggests that they are expressing the cost of this thing to their customers in some other way, right? In other words, you thought you were getting this thing for free as part of this other thing you're paying for, but actually we're charging you for it over here.
Right.
I don't think that the enterprise customers give a flying anything about the true cost of anything. What they care about is what they're paying for. And I think one of the most fascinating things about Microsoft 365, we talked about this, is this notion of when you pay for this thing, you get a bunch of stuff that you don't even know is there. And by force installing Teams, they're putting it in front of you. The businesses that are giving you Microsoft 365 as a user are paying for this thing, and they probably want you to use it, for one thing. They're
more importantly, they don't want to spend money on something else when they already own a product, and we could debate whether better or worse.
Yep. Yep.
already.
There was a, I don't know if I can find this quickly, but there was a really interesting quote that relates to this from Satya Nadella. Yeah. During the conference call last night about the earnings. This is what he said. By the way, no one asked about this. He just said this about actually, he said it. Someone asked a question about, it seems like Office is a really big user base. How do you keep growing this business? Amy Hood answered it, had a very long thing to say. And then he said this. Fundamentally, what we're focused on is making sure that the customers are able to derive the value of our offerings, whether it's the Microsoft 365 suite value, which is significant, whether it's E3 or E5, which are the higher end tiers of Microsoft 365. We want to make sure that they're getting deployed, that they're getting used. And that's obviously going to lead to our share gains in many cases. So in other words, he directly tied the notion of customers understanding all of the stuff that they get that they're paying for already, and that the more they use that stuff, the more their share of this market is going to gain, which is exactly what Slack does not want.
Right.
Right. So, okay. Does Slack, I guess the question here is, does Slack have some kind of a case? Is there a case to be made that Microsoft has a monopoly, that they are abusing that monopoly to harm a competitor in this case? And there's a lot of other crazy language, like Microsoft wants 100% of the money, that kind of stuff.
Would it be similar to the case Netscape had against Internet Explorer?
I'm glad you said that. That's exactly what I compared it to. So, yes, it would be. And what you find is that the same thing happened. The question is whether there's something illegal happening. So from a technical standpoint, yes, Microsoft
DOJ did say there was something illegal in this case.
Well, but we have to look at the technical aspect here, right? So we also have to, well, we have to determine if Office has a monopoly, right? I mean, so but just from what they did technically, so to speak, is they had this dominant product, Windows or Office. They saw a competitor, Netscape / Slack, and they said, we got to respond to that competitor. How do you want to do it? Let's offer to buy them first. First they offered to buy them. They tried to buy both, right? They were going to.
Yep. They did.
Okay, that's not going to work. All right, so let's just, Bill Gates in this case said, hey guys, we already have everything we need to beat Slack. Let's just build our own thing. And they made Teams. When Teams shipped initially, yeah, it was kind of a Slack clone, right? It was chat-based instant messaging, right? It was basically the same thing. Microsoft then did to Teams what they did to IE. They turned it into a platform and they made a better product. Yeah. By the time IE beat Netscape, it wasn't because it was bundled with Windows. It was because it was a better product.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I was there.
People forget that part of it, Yeah. And Teams today, better, it's a much more complete product. It does more things. It's a complete platform. Yeah. And like I said during the earnings call bit, it's also a complete ecosystem, right? Are there small businesses or individuals at companies that want to use Slack? Yeah, maybe. I mean,
we use Slack. We still use Slack.
Okay.
There's also a stickiness. We pay for Office, but there's a stickiness.
Use both. Yeah.
Because once you've got invested into a platform.
Thank you. That cuts exactly to my point, which is, does Microsoft's bundling of Teams, well, one of my points, foreclose Slack or any other competitor from competing in this market? And you just made the case that no, it does not, right? You find value in paying for and using Slack, and so you do, right? Now, not everyone can make that decision. I think a lot of companies would look at this and say, guys, we're paying for this thing. We're going to use it. That would be a problem if the thing you were paying for and using was less good or whatever. It was not as good.
Right.
But I think most of these companies, and Microsoft's really big in the Fortune 500. They're probably not as big in the smaller businesses or whatever, but would tell you that this product is in fact better.
Yeah. The other question is, are they going after the market? Like, is there a Slack importer?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think there is.
But what do you think about this notion of some version of Office, whatever you want to call it, Office, the suite, Office, Microsoft 365? Does this thing have a monopoly in the same way that Microsoft did with Windows in 1995 to 2005 or whatever?
No, because Google Docs is almost equally as big. One would argue they were bigger for a time there, and now M365 is doing very well. But
yeah, I would say so.
There are other products in the market. But Google does not offer a, quote, collaboration tool.
The thing that was unique about Windows at that time was that it was the only way you could access anything related to personal computing for the most part. There was a Mac that was doing poorly.
Yeah.
And there was no mobile, right? There were no smart TVs or smart devices. There was nothing else. So Windows was personal computing. Um, I could make a case that Microsoft 365 Office, whatever you want to call it, is the best productivity solution. But the truth is, we live in an age where we're using Notion.
Yeah.
You know, I pay for
When
Microsoft
we're not happy with the
365,
solution, we do go to
and
alternatives.
I use Notion. There are lots
Yeah.
of free and low cost solutions that meet certain needs. I talk a lot about Markdown editors and note takers and things like that. I use Visual Studio Code to write in Markdown, which is crazy. It's a Microsoft product, but my Office doesn't have the same dominant
no
force.
But they're
over
also
the
not
industry that
doing the
Windows
same
did.
things. Like if you go back to the original antitrust, even before the IE one,
Right.
Microsoft originally sold, basically made a deal with PC manufacturers. It says the only way you get to buy Windows is that you tell us how many PCs you sell and we give you a rate. You know, you are basically pay for every PC no matter what. If you put another OS on it, you're still paying us. And then they said, if you don't put Office on, then Windows is this much more.
Right.
Or you can also include Office. And that was pretty anti-competitive for a market dominant product already. And then the IE thing came in, which, let's face it, the IE thing only happened because Gates lipped off the Senate committee, right? Sure. Like, I guarantee you, Zuckerberg and everybody else watches those videos from August of.
Oh my God, it's like a business case study. Yeah,
don't ever do this.
But right, I mean, yeah, 100%. You were talking earlier about things Intel does right. I mean, Intel got sued for antitrust in the EU 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was. And because of what happened to Microsoft, they just settled immediately. They're like, we're not going through this.
No,
we're going to pay the fine. And by the way, the fine actually got rescinded years later. They appealed the fine part of it, but they changed their business practices to accommodate the EU, which actually is another important point here. What is it that Slack wants here? Like, what's the goal and what's the precedent? One of the things that the EU did to Microsoft as part of the antitrust case there, they had a browser ballot.
Windows.
So the idea was you bring up Windows and they say, hey, look, here are 5 browsers. Which one do you want to use? Is there a world in which there's a ballot for chat-based whatever? And I would sort of make the argument that because Slack doesn't do everything Teams does, there's nothing else that could sit next to Microsoft Teams.
Yeah.
It would have to be a roll-your-own suite of things like Borland used to do, where they teamed up with some other company to bring all the products in that would make it sort of like Microsoft Office, because no one company offered all of that stuff.
No. And Teams does more than you even realize. I mean, if you create a group inside of Teams that matches up with the group name inside of SharePoint, it's an interface over SharePoint. Like literally you have access to the same docs, you can write through it. Like there's so many things that they've deeply embedded into Teams now that good luck. It's got serious advantages.
Right. 100%. And the problem for Slack ultimately is it kind of doesn't matter what happens here. Imagine Microsoft decoupled these things, whatever that means. Teams has 300 million users now, guys. Yeah. It is, as it's just come up a couple of times. It's a platform and it is an ecosystem, right?
And they've already and they're talking about doing it again. It's like, what do you mean exactly? Like, what does that?
Well,
mean?
The language is confusing. That might be partially because the person who wrote it doesn't understand how Office is deployed to businesses or whatever. I can't explain that part of it. But
well, the other thing is, it's not like Slack's going out of business. They're owned by Salesforce. They're not a little company struggling for survival anymore. Well, they got sold for what, $28 billion.
Thank you. Actually,
all their leaders have done just fine.
I didn't even put this in my article. I forgot about this. The other parallel between Netscape and this is that during Microsoft's antitrust trial in the United States, Netscape got acquired by AOL.
Right.
Really undercutting the case. If your situation was so dire, why were you such a valuable asset for this other company?
Right.
So same thing with Slack. I don't know that the EU would be swayed by that. They seem to be really into the little guys, but although Salesforce, not a little guy.
No. And neither was Slack. $28 billion.
Yeah. Actually, I think that was the biggest problem with Microsoft acquiring Slack was the amount of money.
Yeah.
I think, if it had been half that, I think Microsoft would have paid it just to make them go away.
Why don't companies consider, there's so many, if it's just messaging you want, and I think Microsoft understands that's a commodity feature. There's so many other free choices out there. I don't understand. Do companies really need the other features that Teams offers? Is that why?
I think the issue really, honestly, it's the Microsoft double-edged sword. the strength of Teams in many ways, generally speaking, is the integration, right? Richard was just saying it's really just a front end to SharePoint, which is correct. This is another way for people who work in an organization or are on a team or working on a project, whatever it is, to collaborate on whatever it is, a set of documents, a presentation, or whatever. And that where that thing is, we're kind of hiding that from the user because they're just looking in the files tab in Teams. They don't really care where it's stored up in SharePoint.
Yeah.
Who would?
We don't worry about file hierarchies anymore. It just happens. Teams does that for you.
Yeah. I mean, in the old days, we would round robin these things like Word docs and stuff in Outlook via email, and that's stupid. This is a way to have a live document sitting up in a file share somewhere. Again, SharePoint, but people don't know or care.
And even when you do email that document to someone, Exchange Online sees that it came from SharePoint, flips it to a link, and then you're actually working on the original version with version control and all that good stuff.
By the way, the integration continues because Loop's coming down the pike, and Loop will be a way
doing even more
to do more of that live editing inside the document or create new types of documents and blah, 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 on and on it goes. I mean, Microsoft has just taken this thing and run with it, and Slack is like, hey, we're still doing chat-based, good for you. People find value in that. That's great. But I don't know that these things are direct competitors anymore.
They've moved away from that. And all of the voice integration stuff, the video stuff, like they've done a lot. Right. It's one would argue it's too many things, but
Slack does that now too. I mean, Slack's trying to keep parity.
So you guys, you said you use Slack, right? For example. So there's nothing about Microsoft Office that makes it difficult or impossible for you folks to share document formats through Slack, right? There's nothing, it's not like Microsoft has engineered Office to make that a worse experience.
Yeah.
There's nothing like that. That doesn't
You're
exist.
looking for the smoking gun, yeah.
Yeah,
and I think Richard's right. There's a reason Microsoft never made a Slack importer. They're very carefully, navigating around that.
They realized they needed that product space. They decided to try and buy before build. They weren't able to buy, so they built.
Yeah. I don't know why. Right. All I can say is the stickiness of it. You have a lot of history in Slack, and because all of our conversation history is there. I tried. Before Slack, by the way, we were using. God, now I've forgotten because it got acquired.
Oh, that was the right. So there were other chat-based collaboration solutions.
Yeah,
one was called something like Hot or Hip.
Atlassian owned it. HipChat.
HipChat, maybe.
Yeah, I think that was it.
No,
anyway,
so
we were using that.
People ask, well,
fortunately, when Atlassian sold it or whatever, or got acquired,
I think they sold it to Slack.
Yeah, there was a tool to import, so it was
Slack.
We were able to move. But
no, you're right.
I've tried over and over again to get Lisa, because Lisa's the decision maker, to get her to move to Matrix or something free.
Right.
No. Although for a long time we had the free tier only of Slack, and we hit a limit, and without telling her, I just started paying.
That's how they get you.
She probably doesn't even know it's not free anymore. But I mean, you need. How much
does Slack cost?
It's a few $100 a month, I think. I don't remember. Oh, for the whole. It's probably per user. Yeah, for us, I think it's a few $100 a month. But and it's not because it's like 50 users or something at most. I don't know. I think there are other. I would love to use Teams. I think there are other things. There is a stigma against using Teams.
Sure.
You look. We're a tech company, right? So Slack was hip and with it, and the smart thing to do as a tech company. You're with all your other.
Yeah, but so here's the problem with that. You're right. But what that thing is changes all the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. It's not that way anymore.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Pretty soon it'll look like we're old hat.
well, I mean, in other words, the hot hip solution that is whatever to do this.
It'll never be Teams. I'm sorry, but I hate to tell you this.
No, I'm not saying
Microsoft will never be cool.
But the thing that will always be there and work and just be there is Teams.
Right.
Like in other,
no, you're right.
And they I don't have it yet, but they've apparently improved the client dramatically in this new version. So
if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, then you have Teams. If you're not in the Microsoft system, getting into it for Teams is not any fun.
Sure.
And
that's interesting. I don't think we have
won't do
Microsoft for everybody. Most people were still using Google Docs. You know what's interesting? Google does not have a competitor in this space.
Right. Which is weird, right?
They completely fumbled it. They used to.
Does he still? The guy who used to run Microsoft 365 went to run Google Docs, but I feel like he might have left.
So inept. Google. I've never seen a company.
It's weird to me that they didn't.
Future since Xerox like this. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They had Hangouts, and then they kind of split it into chat and Meet.
Yeah, right. No, Google made a mess of that. I pay for a Zoom account for all the folks
as we do. Yeah.
My wife actually pays for one for her work too.
Yeah. We're happy with Zoom. Does Zoom do all that stuff? Could we use Zoom?
No.
Nobody uses Zoom for chat. Do they? Right? I mean, I don't think so.
Zoom is for video conversations for recording.
Microsoft learned that lesson with Skype, right? They thought everybody used Skype for chat.
Well, and people use Skype for I used Skype for a long time to make shows, and then eventually people are saying, "Oh, Skype, yeah, I think I have that."
Yeah,
wait, it's updating.
You've changed to Zoom as we did, and actually, Zoom has given us a much better result.
Well, Richard, I speak for you, but you obviously have everything, right?
Yes,
so you can meet people where they are, but most people understand Zoom.
I love it because I'll look at Lisa's computer at home, and every one of these installs a menu. She's on a Mac menu bar item. So she's got like blue jeans. What is this thing? Blue jeans? What is that? She's got like her menu bar is full of all, because as she's doing sales, she has to meet with whatever the client wants to meet with.
Wherever they are. Yeah.
We use Meet internally, Google Meet. Yep. Occasionally we'll have to do a Teams meeting.
I think what I do.
Last time I used Teams was when I told the Premiere I was quitting. So
we use Meet for hands on Windows, actually.
Yes. What?
Right. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. No, wait, do we?
No, we use Zoom, I promise you.
Oh, is it Zoom? Maybe it's Zoom.
Yeah, okay, But if you met with us, it would be Meet.
I feel like it's Meet. Oh, no, I guess you're right. I'm sorry. Sorry. Yep.
And if they are, I'm going to go spank them.
Nope. Sorry. I'm getting confused.
No spanking required.
Zoom has really worked with us, by the way, in a way that Skype kind of tried to, but really never did well. And we have got Zoom
always
now.
like, sometime in the future, we're going to have this thing for professional broadcasters. Just give us 6 more months.
We had Skype VX. We bought a big box. We had all this stuff.
The NDI.
And Zoom, we get great quality out of Zoom. I'm so
happy. They went to NDI at the end of their life, right? There was a huge battle inside of Microsoft for all the different voice products. Yeah. They had UCS and others. And then it was over, right? Now it's basically consolidated around Teams. And Zoom grabbed onto that and ran with it, and good for them.
Zoom's done a good job. Yep. So is Teams the dominant? I guess it is. If with 300 million net monthly active users, it's got to be the dominant messaging platform in business messaging. Yeah. Is that what it is? Is it business messaging?
Zoom's got to be in there,
but they don't do messaging.
Well, you can chat, right?
But do you have to start a Zoom meeting with somebody to chat with them? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yep. True.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're right. I guess it must be, right? Certainly in the Fortune 500 it is.
I think so. And I'm trying to think what the competitor would be. It's not WhatsApp. It's not Discord. It's not Matrix.
It's not whatever nonsense Amazon has that no one even knows they have.
That's the funniest thing. Amazon has all these fairly compelling offerings that no one
even knows they exist. Yep, exactly. It's weird that Google has, like I said, Meet.
Amazon doesn't believe in advertising. And I just like to mention to all of our advertisers, you see, that's why you advertise. Yep. It makes a difference. People don't know, won't hear about it. You know who else doesn't believe in advertising? Elon Musk.
Yeah.
But he's got a way to do it, which is to offend everybody and get them to talk about it.
What was the worst explosion last week, SpaceX or Twitter?
Ow.
I'm sorry.
Folks. Yeah. I'm sorry.
The crater under Starship is actually larger, but not by much.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, boy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Teams really is the incumbent at this point.
Yeah. And all the more reason to attack them.
Sure.
Hey, I know you're super busy, so I won't keep you long, but I wanted to tell you about a show here on the TWiT network called Tech News Weekly. You are a busy person, and during your week, you may want to learn about all the tech news that's fit to say, not print, here on TWiT. It's Tech News Weekly. Me, Micah Sargent, my co-host, Jason Howell. We talk to and about the people making and breaking the tech news, and we love the opportunity to get to share those stories with you and let the people who wrote them or broke them share them as well. So I hope you check it out every Thursday right here on TWiT.